start.
Yes, sir. We are live now. I'll share the link with you, sir. You can start now, sir.
Yeah. So, good evening, friends. Happy Sunday. First Sunday of the May month. Actually, we were supposed to be off the lockdown today, but still we are locked. So, we have this interesting panel on a stone disease. I am Dr. Prashant Mulaukar, and I have got a very illustrious panel. And the first one amongst them is the Dr. Ravindra Sadnis. He is the one who is the senior most of all and would be giving the expert comments on different cases. He is the current chairman of MPUH and he has held almost all the positions in Urological Society of India, except probably president. So we come to the next person, that is Dr. Anil Evans. He is from North Zone, from Meerut, and he is the immediate past president of North Zone chapter of Urological Society of India. Dr. Nitesh Jain is from Chennai. He is an expert in endourology and robotic surgery. He works in Apollo Chennai. Our next panelist is Dr. Pankaj Maheshwari. He is the first man to start HOLEP in India. He has got a vast experience of dealing with stones and prostates of different sizes, different locations, and different compositions. Tanuj is a young, upcoming guy, very well versed with the surgeries for urological conditions, and a very talented guy. And Dr. R. Vijay Kumar, vast experience of doing more than 60,000 stone operations in his career. And he was previously working with RJ Stone Urology Clinic, Chennai, and currently is working with Same Hospital, Chennai. And that's me, Dr. Prashant Mulaukar. I'm practicing in Akola since last 20-25 years. And I'm also associated with University of Edinburgh as a tutor in urology. I teach students in a CHM urology program. We come to the first case. The first case is Dr. Anil Evans. Let's start from the north.
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Anil. This
Yes.
is a patient with a 48-year male who has pain in abdomen and has bilateral flank pain. 1 year back he had hematuria, and 16 years back he had a kidney stone for which he underwent lithotripsy. The sonography shows a fixed hyperepic lesion in the with posterior acoustic shadowing, which is adherent to the anterior wall of urinary bladder. Because he was having past history of lithotripsy, we did his IVP to see whether he has any kidney stones. And this is the picture that you can see. This is the stone, as you can see here. Don't look at the kidneys. Look at this shadow here only. This shadow. Okay.
Yes.
Can I go to next slide?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, this is the post-void shadow of the bladder, and this is the shadow which looks like a diya on bladder. So, Dr. Anil, how can you describe the IVP findings? What do you think it is, and what are the options, and what are you going to do with this patient?
Given the fact that this patient had history of stone disease past, it doesn't seem very relevant right now, but he had hematuria. And there is a fixed lesion, echogenic, adherent to the anterior wall of the bladder. So with that finding, I would not have gone with an IVU. I would have straight away gone with a CT scan. And because a calculus disease would not have been in my first line of the possibility. So I would have rather opted for a CT scan. Given the fact that now we have got an IVU image, the ROS seems outside the outline of the bladder.
Yeah.
And given this fact that this is not within the bladder, it's a fixed lesion there, I would still opt for a CT scan before I make any further comments. Though it might well, there was no diverticulum seen on the ultrasound.
Yeah.
So this shadow as of now seems outside the urinary bladder.
Yeah. Dr. Anil, this patient was operated around 15 years back by me, and those days the primary investigation for hematuria was IVU and not CT. And
Yeah,
CT
agree.
IVU was not available, so this is what we have.
Correct,
So
correct, correct.
consider that you are working 15 years back, and would you proceed in this case without an CT, without CT?
In the current scenario, I would not.
Okay.
But given the fact that if we go back in time 15 years and an ultrasound has shown, I would like to have a relook at the ultrasound whether that echogenic foci which was seen is actually a part of the bladder, or it was a larger shadow seen probably in the it is juxtavesical and was reported as being part of the bladder. It could well have been lying outside the bladder, but the shadowing
I'll go
would have
back.
taken it right into the bladder.
Dr. Anil, I'll go back to the IUP film. The shadow is moving with bladder. As the bladder distends, that goes up. As the bladder collapses, the shadow comes down.
Yes. So,
And
I
also
mean,
we see some contrast by the side of the shadow,
There's no
at least
contrast
in the
by-
post-word image.
the post-wide image.
I mean, I can't be sure of the shadows because of the post-void image. There are some gas shadows around also, so I won't be very sure. There's a globular shadow seen just above the stone. It
Yeah.
could well be a calculus lying in the urachus, for all you know, but an echogenic foci within the urachus, because since it is moving with the bladder, as the bladder distance goes up and comes down. But the fact of the matter is, I won't really appreciate any contrast around the bladder. I won't be sure on this image.
Okay. So anything apart from CT would like to do if CT is not available?
If CT is not available, I like to go in and have a look at the dome of the bladder and see what exactly we can find there.
Yeah, that's the cystoscopy. That's the bladder neck here.
Yes.
And this is the calculus which is hanging from the bladder.
Okay.
This is the part where the calculus is seen, and this much part actually we had cut with the Collins knife, and get complete stone dropped down in bladder and then fragmented and removed.
But yeah, so the fact of the matter here is that this shadow we got, the IVU image was not commensurate with the fact that this was part of the bladder, and so it is a very unlikely scenario where the stone is adherent. So we would have to have a look at whether it has really come in from. We are right at the dome, as I guess, in this image.
As you can see here, this part was in the urachus, and this part was hanging in the bladder.
So dumbbell shaped here.
Yeah, dumbbell shape. Anybody wants to make any comment on this?
No, I think Prashant, this can happen. Sometimes the stone gets adherent to the bladder, and what you have said is quite right. That if it is a diverticulum, then you can have a dumbbell-shaped shadow, which can have there. Urachus also it can be considered as a part of like a diverticulum stone. But very important thing in a situation like this is that quite often, if the previously operated patient, if there is some stitch or some LACS is done, some surgery is done, then this can happen that that part of the stone actually gets adherent because it is on the nidus, that is on the nidus. And then you can get picture like this, that it is a hanging stone which is adherent. And once you start disintegrating the stone, you find that there is some nidus like in the form of a suture material, something can be seen. And that needs to be removed. Otherwise, you will form the stone again and again as a nidus.
This patient did not have any history of past open surgery.
Correct. So in that case, what you have done is absolutely true. It's a dumbbell-shaped stone, which is classically in the diverticulum or in the urachus.
With that, we come to the next patient. This is for Dr. Sabnis.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a 28-year male patient who has a severe pain in right flank from one day. He stopped vomiting, no fever. And he had similar pain 10 days back. He was treated on OPD basis that time. Sonography was done at that time, was normal. Now, 10 days later, he has come in a colic. We hospitalized him. His creatinine is normal, TLC is normal, and urine shows plenty of RBCs. As his previous sonography was not showing any calculus, this time we did his CT, and the CT is showing a right urinary calculus at S3 level. I'll show you the CT. That's the CT. The positive findings I am again showing you here. This is the calculus at S3 level, and this patient had a colic 10 days back and now is admitted. So, and the calculus is 12 millimeter vertically, 6 millimeter anterior-posterior, and 6 millimeter transverse.
And how much is hydronephrosis? Not much.
Not much, and it is 1100 HU. 1100.
Your voice is cracking, Prashant.
Okay.
So we can't, Prashant, we can't hear. Your voice is cracking.
Can you see my video? Can you see the slide here?
Yes, yes, we can see the slide, but your audio is cracking.
So this is he has got a right ureteric calculus and
Correct. I saw that.
What are the options now? What will you do now?
No, the question is that this is NCCT, creatinine is normal. So ultrasound shows any hydronephrosis or anything?
No, sir.
Okay, so in view of no hydronephrosis, vertical dimension is 10 millimeter. And what is the width of the stone?
6 millimeter.
6 millimeter. So he has very less chance of passing this stone of his own. It is in the mid ureter, so he needs to be explained that two options. If he wants to wait, he can wait. But in view of already one colic and now again a colic, it is better to intervene because it is still in the mid ureter, 10 millimeter by 6 millimeter. Chances of spontaneous passage is about 20 to 30%. So I would advise him to undergo intervention in the form of a ureteroscopy.
Anybody would like to do any other option here?
You see, if the patient is keen, we could conserve for maybe 10 more days. But as Saran rightly said, the possibility of this stone coming out on its own will be very less. Okay. One more thing which would bother me is that even if it comes out through the UV junction, a 12 millimeter stone has a potential to block the urethra. So I would make the patient aware of this. If he insists, we conserve, but otherwise I would really push him towards ureteroscopy.
Yeah, Prashant, he has got absolutely no indication for an immediate intervention. But yes, he has to be told of the facts which Pankaj just mentioned, that it might even get impacted in the posterior urethra. So if he is suffering from pain, we can go ahead. If he's willing to wait for up to 3 weeks, he has just passed 10 days, so another 10 days can be waited out in case
So
the patient is so.
What are the current indications for MET?
Current indications, what have you mentioned here? Is efficient.
2020 guidelines EAU.
Yeah.
Alpha blockers as medical explorative therapy as one of the treatment options for distal ureteric stones more than 5 millimeter, and strength rating is strong now. In the previous EAU guidelines, it was an option, but now it has come with a level of evidence of 1A. And it seems to be efficacious for stones which are larger than 5 millimeters.
Prashant, can I ask one question here to the full panel? You see, just saying more than 5 millimeters doesn't work.
Yeah.
We also need to decide on the upper limit.
Yeah.
Okay, so probably a 12 millimeter stone is a bit large, where I would not be very confident of it being managed by MET.
Okay.
Pankaj, another factor is the shape of the stone.
Yeah.
A longitudinal stone might well pass out, while a triangular or a oval stone would not be able to pass. Would not be.
Prashant, as everybody has said, this stone, quite often you have to see the width rather than the length, because length is all right, even if it is slightly longer length. But width is the one which is the deciding factor. And this, as everybody has said, that both options are there. We have seen quite often even 1 centimeter stone, 1.2 centimeter stone also patient come out and they show it. But if you see the statistics, there is a chance of this patient 6 millimeter by 10 millimeter stone. He has about 20 to 30% chance of passing spontaneously, but 70% chance that eventually he will need intervention. Now, when to do that intervention is his patient's choice.
Okay, sir. So this patient wanted to wait for 2 weeks. We gave him MET, but it did not work. This is his sonography, which is done around 2 weeks. That's the current status here. The stone is in the lower ureter, but he is still having pain. He has got 3 hospitalizations, 3 episodes of pulling in last 1 month, and we have offered him surgery.
So he requires a ureteroscopy, but now when there is an impacted stone with repeated episodes of colic and the stone has come down into the lower ureter, it becomes little complicated because of the edema. Sometimes the ureteric orifice, the mucosa, and is become friable. The wire is not stable. Wire does not go, and you need to really carefully go into the ureter with a slender ureteroscope to see that you don't damage the ureter, you don't create a false passage. And that is how you need to manage, because impaction creates the edema.
Yeah. So that stone surgery is required. Everybody in the panel feels that surgery is required for that patient.
So
Next patient, that is case number 3, and this is for Nitesh. Nitesh, you are
Yes,
there?
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is the patient for you. This is a 43-year male patient. Left abdominal pain, left renal tenderness, and his TLC is normal, creatinine is normal. 1 month back, he has undergone a sonography which was showing 11 millimeter calculus in left kidney, and 1.4 centimeter calculus was seen on KUB X-ray. I will be showing you the KUB X-ray now. That was the calculus which was seen 1 month back. Today he has come with colic. Doesn't have a very severe pain, but there is a renal angle tenderness, TLC and creatinine is normal. So with this, we did a CT. It is showing a 10 by 7 by 8 calculus with Houn's limit of 700 in left upper ureter with moderate hydronephrosis. And here you can see that there is a perinephric collection. See. So with this left-sided pain, which is not very severe, and he is a diagnosed case of calculus, would you like to go ahead with a plain CT in this patient, or would you like to give him contrast?
Since the CT is also showing perinephric collection and all, I would like to go for a contrast CT. Actually, we can ask the radiologist just to have a look and then decide upon.
The similar thing happened. This was the calculus which was seen here, and this is the calculus. This is the contrast study.
Prashant, again, I have an objection to this. How is contrast going to help you in this patient? The very fact that there is a perirenal fluid collection, it shows that this is a severely obstructing patient stone with significant intrarenal pressures. This indirectly suggests that there is some formation tear. Giving contrast would increase the diuresis, increase the pressure, and probably increase the perirenal fluid collection. Rather, if anything, I would say this is one patient where I would not want to give contrast.
Sir, here there is a perinephric collection and the stone is obstructing and the hydronephrosis is quite significant. We would also like to know the excretion of the kidney to prognosticate it. Whatever we are going to remove the stone, but suppose in future the kidney goes and becomes non-excreting, entire blame will be on us. So to be on safer side, I feel contrast is needed in such cases.
But Nitesh, the contrast examination in an acute pain setting would anyway be underreporting the degree of function. So
now
we can't really.
Now he is not having such severe pain. He had a colic almost 1 month back. Now he is more comfortable when he has come now.
The absence of pain is because of the perirenal fluid collection.
Because it is there has been a vent out of his collected fluid. There has been a fornicial rupture, and that is why he has vented his pressure. And but the pressure would still be high.
So my question to everyone is that what is the harm in giving a contrast? Pankaj, you said that the contrast is going to cause extravasation and it will cause any problem. But even if the contrast extravasates, how does it matter? It's an IV contrast. You are not doing any RGP and you are not going to introduce any infection. In fact, you will come to know how much is the extravasation of the contrast quite often the non-functioning kidney gives a clue that this is likely to be a turbid hydronephrosis, turbid fluid in the this. In a contrast sonography, in a CT IVP, if there is extravasation and if there is any hydronephrosis, you are thinking in terms of a pyonephrosis, and therefore giving contrast is not, IV contrast is not going to make any such a major difference, because in any case you are going to intervene.
But is our management? Our management is not going to change.
Exactly.
Yes,
sir.
management will not change, but it will give you some idea.
Sir, I have couple of thoughts.
Yeah, Prashant, go ahead.
We'll proceed with this case, and I've got this question I'm going to ask you again after 2 minutes. Right?
Yeah.
So this is the control, this is the contrast, and in the next film you can see here, this is the obstructed kidney. That's the stone here. The other kidney is normal. Now, Nitesh.
Yes, sir.
What are your
Sir,
options?
I will go. I will go inside, do a URS. If the stone is very soft and easily can be broken by laser, I'll just break it. Otherwise, I'll just put a stent and come out, put a catheter. Wait for a couple of weeks, and then probably I will go ahead and do remove the stone.
No, your primary intention of going in would be just doing a stenting, or you would like to do an invasive procedure like ureteroscopy in this patient?
More towards stenting, sir. Unless until stone is very, very soft, I would like to do stenting only.
But you would like to put in a ureteroscope inside?
Yes, sir.
How many?
I would stent is not going easily under CM, then probably a ureteroscopy and do the, because stone looks quite impacted. If you see the CT, the contrast is not coming, not trickling down the ureter. So stone looks quite impacted there. And it has caused some fornication. So it is again indirect evidence it is impacted. So probably we may have to push the stone inside, or rather than do a PCN otherwise.
Well, half of our panelists are not willing to give contrast to this patient. I think putting in a ureteroscope in this patient would not be an advisable thing. How many of us would like to put in a ureteroscope in this situation?
Not me.
Not Dr. Vijay Kumar?
Yeah. See.
No, just yes or no.
Yes, I will put a ureteroscope.
Will put a ureteroscope. Tanuj?
No, sir.
Fragment is
No way.
And the last word, Dr. Sabnis, would you like to put a ureteroscope?
No, I would always prefer to do PCN and PCNL basically. No ureteroscope, PCNL. But Prashant, if the people are doing a ureteroscopy, if total count is normal, if everything is normal, I don't see any harm in if person is used to do ureteroscopy. I don't think there is any harm of doing somebody wants to do ureteroscopy.
But he has got a perirenal collection. In this situation, by putting in a ureteroscope, you are increasing the intrarenal collection.
I agree. But if it is even if it is a perirenal collection, by putting a ureteroscope and breaking the stone, which is only 700 HU, which is a very soft stone, and you are not seeing any gross extravasation of the contrast on the CT scan. So going into by ureteroscopy and breaking the stone quickly and putting a DG stent is not going to cause much problem. However, I personally would do only PCNL in a situation like this.
Okay.
Putting in a ureteroscope in such a scenario, we might convert the paranephric collection into a paranephric infected collection. That is a risk.
Yeah,
We did his stenting only. We did a stenting. And
So suppose same patient, the wire is not going across, what you are going to do?
didn't get you.
For same patient, the wire is not crossing the ureter, then probably we have to put a ureteroscope or do a PCN.
Yeah, either put a ureteroscope or do a PCN, but in my situation, I usually
So you are not, at any cost, you are not going to do ureteroscope in this.
No, but if the wire is not going in a patient with extravasation, I would like to do a PCN. That's my choice.
Okay.
I agree with Prashant.
Okay, now Nitesh,
Yes, sir.
I have put in a stent and send that patient to you. What would you like to do with this patient now?
So I will wait for 2 weeks and then
Yeah.
probably go in again and do URS and take out the stone, sir.
Would you like to consider lithotripsy in this patient now? 2 weeks are over. He is stented, we obstructed, fine, no problem, no pain, no infection, no fever.
So ureteroscopy, since the stone was quite obstructed and impacted there, probably the chances of it coming out may be slightly less.
Prashant, ureteroscopy with the ESWL, unless you have this stone on the X-ray, it was not seen properly. It is a 700 H stone, which is a relatively radiolucent stone. And therefore, unless you have an ultrasound guided ESWL, it is very difficult to localize. But if it is there, yes, it can be the option. But with the stent in position, doing RIRS is the probably the best option as of today now.
Yeah.
Prashant, I have one comment to make here. Sorry, Dr. Vijay Kumar, you proceed.
Yeah, I would first like to see the perinephric space, whether that the collection has resolved. Then definitely I will do a retrograde ureteroscopy, and that will be the stent. 2 weeks. If the collection has resolved, ureteroscopy will be.
Prashant, I have one comment here. I feel that we need to use these two terminologies properly. Means the stone is obstructing versus stone is impacted. These are two totally different things. In this patient, probably the stone is obstructed, not impacted. To call something impacted, it should be obstructed for a reasonably long time. This is my thought. I stand to correction.
The guide wire, you were able to bypass the stone with the guide wire, so by definition it is not impacted.
Yeah,
No, I think this stone must have gone with the guide wire only. It must have gone back to the kidney, the stenting must have been quite easy.
I'll show you the post stenting. Actually, this patient opted for a lithotripsy, and he underwent 2 sessions of lithotripsy. The stone is still there. This is the stone.
So it is still in the PUJ only.
It's still in that position, and 2 sessions of lithotripsy given with ultrasound as well as X-ray localization, but the stone did not break. And ultimately, we did a ureteroscopy and RIRS in this patient.
I think it is a case to learn for everyone that if the stone is there in the PUJ and if you have a stent across the thing, the chances of clearance are very, very less. If it had migrated into the kidney, then okay, ESWL is an option. But if it is the PUJ in situ ESWL at the PUJ level, the clearance rate is very poor. Best is to do ureteroscopy RIRS.
Okay. Now I
That's
come
the point.
to Dr. Yes.
See, the one more point, just to add to what Dr. Sabnis said, at the PUJ, especially if you notice that X-ray, the stone was over the transverse process. After the stenting, and when the stone is over the transverse process, many a time the shock wave doesn't reach the stone. The transverse process impedes the passage of the shock waves. So PUJ stone with the stent inside, often it is over a transverse process, it doesn't break. So you will have to do an RIRS for clearance.
Okay. So we'll come to the contrast issue here. Again, 2 patients. That's the right renal pain, no hydronephrosis. The kidney is looking normal. The cortex is looking normal. And this is the stone here. And contrast, no function. This is not done in acute setting.
It can happen. See, yes, that's why, Prashant, if there is no hydronephrosis and if it is a stone, if there is no colic, other option which you have to see if the contrast is that whether there is any infection or not. Because if there is an infection, the contrast excretion will not be there. There could be just a mild hydronephrosis and pyonephrotic kidney will not show any function.
Okay, sir. So whether to give contrast or not will depend upon pain, creatinine, infection, and non-acute presentation.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. Next, another patient. This is again a cortex which is not a very bad cortex, but he has got a significant hydronephrosis and a calculus lower down in the ureter here, and that kidney is just showing a 15% function. So we'll rest that issue there and come to our next patient. Pankaj, this is for you.
Okay, Prashant.
Yeah. 32-year male. This again managed around 10 years back, so don't ask for CT. Intermittent severe right colicky pain since 1 month, and he was hospitalized for renal colic. At present, he is pain free, and his creatinine is normal. Urine is showing RBCs, and that's the IVP. This is the stone here. Okay, small stone seen here.
Okay, so mildly obstructing stone in a nearly good functioning kidney.
Yes.
8 millimeter upper aortic stone. And
Yes.
how much is the pain you have said?
So now it's pain relief. Pain is relieved.
Pain is relieved. Okay. So in a 8 millimeter upper aortic stone, I would feel that the possibility of this stone coming out with medical management is very low. So I would counsel this patient in couple of ways. Option one, if he wants to try medical treatment for some time, it is possible. Keeping the kidney obstructed for up till 6 weeks is fairly safe. So waiting 2 weeks would not be any harm. If the second choice would be ESWL would be a very good option for a minimally obstructing upper aortic stone. So these are the two ways I would look at. Ureteroscopy obviously is there. So these would be my flow of thinking.
So if you want to intervene, your first option would be ESWL.
Yes.
Anybody who wants to differ on that?
I will differ, Prashant, because if you do in situ ESWL for upper ureteric stone, the consistent results are not good. And because it is unobstructed, the upper ureter is not much dilated. So there is not much water around the stone. And that's the reason why the in situ ESWL for upper ureteric stone results are not all that good. So in a current scenario, instead of trying and this that, it is the ureteroscopy which is the treatment of choice.
Okay. So you would like to do a ureteroscopy, Dr. Anil?
Yeah, if you see the IVU films, just you can see an irregularity and the ureter is not very smooth at that area where the stone is. So there is significant mucosal edema. So even that is a factor which will go against in situ lithotripsy. So the stone will be enveloped by the mucosal folds and very unlikely that the ESW will be effective in such a scenario.
So Dr. Vijay Kumar, would you like to do ESW or ureteroscopy?
No, I would definitely give it a trial with ESW.
Okay. Nitesh?
I'll go ahead with ESWL, sir, and then see, because ureter, now we can see the dye draining quite well. So in all likelihood, and the stone is also clearly seen on X-ray AUV. So in all likelihood, the stone should pass out.
Anuj?
It does appear to be a relatively softer stone if you compare it to the bone, sir. So one lithotripsy, if it doesn't work, then RAR.
Fine. So we proceeded with, actually we waited for 1 month because patient wanted to wait. This stone did not progress further and he underwent ureteroscopy. We tried ureteroscopy with the 8 of 6 French, the scope did not go. Ultimately 4.5 French scope went in. The stone was fragmented with holmium laser. The fragments were not removed. I'll be showing you the operative video. That's the stone here.
So Prashant, did you do ESWL or you just went with ureteroscopy?
No ESWL, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
You see, I think you waited for 1 month, isn't it?
Yeah, waited for 1 month. And this
Now,
is the
after
operative video. See.
the changes.
See the mucosal edema and the turbid fluid that is coming out. Then the turbid urine is coming out. His preoperative culture was negative.
The mucosal edema was seen on the preoperative films as well.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So he
That's a very nice observation, Anil. I'm really impressed. I had to magnify it to really appreciate it.
वो राव सर बोलते थे ना ये बाल धूप में सफेद नहीं हुए हैं.
अब बात तो समझ के सफेद हो गया अनिल का.
So this stone have come down over 1 month, little bit. No.
Sir?
The stone have come down. If you see the
it did not progress.
So Prashant, for 1 month, did he have pain for 1 month or he was pain free?
He was not having severe pain. He was just having mild pain, and in 1 month back he came. 1 month later he came. So we did a ureteroscopy. I'll proceed. This is the stent that we have put, and now when would you like to remove the stent? Pankaj.
I would remove the stent as per my routine schedule of around 2 to 3 weeks. Keeping it any longer is really not necessary. Yes, there was some mucosal edema seen there, but that could be because of the stone being there and associated infection. So I would cover this patient well with antibiotics post-op and remove the stent maybe around 3 weeks.
So you have removed the stone, removed the stent, and 3 months later, patient comes back with right flank pain again. The X-ray does not show a calculus, although the X-ray is not very good. Sonography showed only hydronephrosis, but no stone was seen on sonography. Urine culture, no growth, but he had an episode of fever which was settled. Now, what are your options in this patient? 3 months after his ureteroscopy, he comes with pain and hydronephrosis. What would you do?
Prashant, has the hydronephrosis increased as compared to the previous hydronephrosis?
Yes, it has increased.
It has increased. Okay, so this is one patient where I would definitely do a contrast CT, because my suspicion now is, are we dealing with any stricture at the stone site? So contrast CT will help me decide what we are dealing with.
Well, in this case, again, we managed around 10 years back, so we did not have access to the CT back those days. So we did his retrograde pyelography, and this is the ureteric stricture that you see here. We were able to bypass it with a guide wire and put in a stent. Okay, want to see the stricture again?
Yes.
This is the stricture. And the DJ stent is in situ. Now, after stenting, 1 month has passed, and what would you do now? After stenting.
Okay, now you see what we have done is we have just done a plain simple stenting. We have not really treated the stricture. We have just say in a way we have bought time. So we need to treat the stricture on its merit. It appears a short segment stricture. It's a post say because of stricture which has formed related to ureteritis related to stone. So such strictures, the options could be, all three options are there. Dilatation can be done, but the results of dilatation will not be very long standing. Ureterotomy is one option, and final would be a surgery. But in view of this young patient, I would first give one trial of ureterotomy, failing which I would look at further surgical repair.
Anybody disagrees with the option of ureterotomy, endoureterotomy? Anybody has any other option apart from this?
At the time of initial, when you did an RGP and passed a stent, I would have tried to dilate it at that very point of time. And then
even I would have done that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, dilated it to say about 12 French or 14 French, if whichever was comfortably, it went dilated to, and then kept a stent for 3 months. And then if it fails, then I think the only choice would be a definitive treatment. Ureterotomy or any further dilatation would not work for such a patient.
Okay, sir. So anyway, we did not dilate at that time. This is now we are doing a endoureterotomy, and we put in 2 guide wires, and in between these 2 guide wires we pass in ureteroscope, and the ureter was incised with holmium laser. Just Pankaj, just for theoretical issue, where would you cut this upper ureter?
Upper ureter should be cut at 9 o'clock. You don't want to cut at 3 o'clock because the blood vessels are there towards 3 o'clock. So at the cut will be perfectly what you have done. That is 9 o'clock.
This is okay. You are happy with this?
Absolutely good.
So thank you. So nice. So this is the extraversion of contrast which was demonstrated after.
Fabulous.
And we went up, put in a stent, and patient is doing good.
Dr. How many years after the ureterotomy has passed?
10 years have passed.
Good. Good.
That's fabulous question.
Then this ureterotomy has worked.
Yeah, it has worked. And another thing with us is we have got a very strict follow-up of patients, and I must be having all the records of all my patients over last 20-25 years.
That I vouch for.
Dr. Sabnis, any finer aspects in the management of this patient you would like to advise to the younger generation?
No, I think what you have done is right. But as a point, whenever you see the impacted stone like this, what we do is that we generally, when there is a difficulty at impacted stone, After stone removal, we assess the mucosa, and if it is irregular and it is likely to go into the stricture, we dilate the ureter and put a long-term DJ. Sometimes we put a 2 double J stent for 1 year upper Q flex, so that whatever damage which has occurred, eventually there is a time and there is a stent across in which the epithelialization takes place, and that's the way you can avoid the further interventions. So that's the only thing.
Sub,
Okay, sir.
Subnis, would you feel that in 2020, for a young fit patient, is ureterotomy a frontline or a first choice procedure?
No, sometimes what happens is that
In a young fit person, 20-year-old, 80 years to live.
no, actually, the ureter can get stabilized. See, ureteric stricture is a very notorious problem. No treatment is 100% surety. So one attempt of the dilatation with the 2 double J stent for 1 year, if that also fails, then patient also is convinced, you are also convinced that he requires the definitive surgery. So that's the approach which we take. But of course, it is the personal variation of what is the opinion of the patient and the expertise of the surgeon.
Okay, sir. We'll go to the next patient. Anuj.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is a patient for you. 41-year male patient. He's a known case of poliomyelitis. He has paralysis of both the lower limbs. He cannot walk. He just crawls and uses a wheelchair. And he has got a left ureteric stone since last 4 to 5 years. Left line pain, intermittent nausea, vomiting. And his creatinine is normal. Urine culture is no growth. RBC is 20 to 25 in the urine. And this is the plain CT. These are the deformities, different deformities he has. This is the stone in the mid ureter at sacral level. I'll show you one more picture. This is the contrast CT showing hydronephrotic left kidney and a calculus in the sacral region. And I'll show you how he looks. This is how he looks. This is how he looks. Tanuj.
Yes, sir.
So, what would you like to do with this patient?
The first question would be, is it possible to put him in the lithotomy position, sir?
Yes, his lower limbs are paralyzed. You can move those limbs. Only thing is he has got flexion deformities of hips and knees, and it is possible to put him in some lithotomy position. Yes, possible.
And
Actually,
you said is on.
if you see this film, whenever he lies down, he is in lithotomy position.
Right. And the stone is around 12 millimeters, sir.
Stone is around, I'll come to the stone. Stone is 1.4 centimeter by 1.2 centimeter by 1.3 centimeter, 1200 HU.
So, this is a big stone which has been there for many years. So definitely he needs definitive treatment for that, sir. And it's a difficult surgery mainly because of the positioning of the patient. The options, if patient I can put in a lithotomy position, I would like to try flexible ureteroscopy in this case. Femorizate it will be very difficult. If I can just pass the guide wire and I can pass a shorter length access sheet just till the lower ureter, then I can pass a flexible ureteroscope and break the stone with it. If that is not possible, if positioning is not possible, then I would like to place a PCN first, and then later, maybe after 2 weeks, through the same track, I would like to go with a flexible scope anti-radius for this stone.
Anybody disagrees with him?
No, I think what he has said is right. Quite often, even in a kyphoscoliosis, the semi-rigid ureteroscope can be passed. There is not a problem. But as he rightly pointed out, in case if there is any difficulty, flexible, nowadays we have flexible ureteroscope, so positioning and all, it's not such a major problem. Any position if patient you keep, flexible ureteroscope can be passed, and then the stone can be broken up. This is a lower ureteric stone, so it should not be a problem. In fact, doing PCN is a problem, because sometimes you don't know where exactly is the system. You have to have proper ultrasound, see whether there are any other structures which are there in between or not. So I think ureteroscopy should not be a problem.
In such cases, I feel in case if you're not able to put, flexi, then open also is a good option. Just put a small incision and take out the stone.
So anyway, we were able to put in a rigid, semi-rigid ureteroscope in this patient, and we blasted the stone with OTM laser. The patient is discharged just today. Next patient is for Dr. Vijay Kumar. 2 patients for you together.
Yes.
Sir. So this is a 4-year female patient who has abdomen and flank pain since last 3 to 4 months. They have history of recurrent fever, nausea and vomiting. The sonography report is a bit confusing. They had reported a very mal-rotated solitary right kidney or a cross-tube ectopy of left to right. And CT-IVU is showing a solitary right kidney with mal-rotation and a large calculus in the right lower ureter. MCU was done, it is normal, so we are not going to that issue. We are just discussing the stone of this patient. So this patient has a hydronephrotic right kidney, which is a solitary kidney, and it is mal-rotated kidney. Unfortunately, her CT films are not available, but I'll be showing you the retrograde pyelography, and you have to make on that what we want to do with this patient.
What was it?
Yes.
Renal function?
Renal function is good, sir. See, solitary kidney, normal creatinine. Solitary kidney, normal creatinine, good renal function, 4-year female patient. Of course, on a preliminary screening, the calculus was not radio opaque, but on putting in a contrast, I will show you the contrast. This is how the calculus looks. This is the radiolucent calculus seen in the right mid ureter, and that's the ureter which is dilated. I'll show you another RGP film. That's the stone, and that's the mal-rotated solitary kidney. So you have around 3.5 centimeter calculus in right ureter. This patient has got a dilated ureter, and I'm removing the guide wire and ureteric catheter. All the contrast has drained off. So it is non-obstructed, non-refluxing, dilated ureter, and the stone, solitary kidney.
First get a pediatric assessment whether there are any other congenital abnormalities. Solitary kidney, there are some syndromes which can go along with this. There is a heavy trigone on the other side. So first look for other abnormalities and to evaluate for anesthesia. Now obviously you have done an RBP and this shows that it's definitely a solid kidney. The left heavy trigone is absent. And it's a pretty large stone there, the renal pelvis adjoining the ureter with a hugely dilated. Retrograde access for such a large stone would not be an option. Child is 4 years old. What is the body weight, sir? What is the weight?
The weight must be around 15 kg, but I do not remember and I do not have that record.
So she would not have been very well built, malnutrition and things like that would be there. So I would definitely request the help of a laparoscopic surgeon. I do laparoscopy, but not done for a very small child of this size.
So you would like to remove the laparoscopy?
Yeah, I will try to see whether we can do a laparoscopy, reflect the colon, and approach the pelvis and take out the stone.
Just we'll go to the other panelists. Quick, Dr. Anil, what's your opinion? Ureteroscopy, laparoscopy, open surgery?
I would, in this patient, I would not consider retrograde procedure at all, considering giving respect to her urethra. I would agree with Vijay and do a lap ureteral thoracotomy. In case if that option is not there, an open ureteral thoracotomy.
Nitesh?
Yes, probably lap ureteral lithotomy in this case. Sir.
Yes, so it's a very big stone. We have to keep the anesthesia time short. So open or lap ureteral lithotomy would be best.
Pankaj?
As it's a small girl, I would want to avoid a scar, and that is why I would try for laparoscopy.
No, I think what is the HU of the stone? You did plain CT, no?
441.
441. So it is just a very, probably it is a slough-like thing. So very, very soft stone. The 441 is the like having slough. So I would do ureteroscopy from below. It's a female urethra. So urethra is not a problem. So you can do ureteroscopy in the children. The ureteroscope is, I mean, ureter is quite pliable. You can put an 8-fringe ureteroscope, and then you can put a suction shock pulse and things like that, which are available. And then you can actually, this 3 centimeter stone can be sucked out without any problem. This is a 440 HU stone. Within no time, it will get sucked out, and the whole thing will be cleared. Because there is a recurrent UTI, there is a fever, it is likely to be a slough-like stone, which can be easily treated with the ureteroscope.
Pulse is not available with me. Can I use Gulmi laser for this stone?
No, but you can go with the ureteroscope, see how the things are, and accordingly you can decide. In case if you think that it is all slough, which is not coming out, then you have no option but to do open surgery and take it up.
So we come back to Dr. Vijay Kumar.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Your options were either a laparoscopic or a open surgery.
Yes.
Yeah. So I did an open surgery for this patient. This is the stone, which is around 3.5 centimeters in size, and the stone is composed of xanthine. What would you do with this xanthine now, sir?
So she would require further evaluation, metabolic evaluation, obviously. There could be other abnormalities also.
Actually, I tried a lot to do her metabolic evaluation, but I did not get any lab in India who does xanthine oxidase enzyme deficiency studies. If you are aware, please tell me.
Sir, even if we are able to detect the abnormality, treatment will be same. So I also had a patient who had multiple recurrences with xanthine, and the only thing we can advise is good hydration.
So the other thing is allopurinol should not be used in these patients. Only thing you have to make the urine alkaline. Xanthine stones are found in acidic urine, and this is an autosomal recessive disorder. This patient had a history of third-degree consanguinity marriage. You see the child of third-degree consanguineous marriage. Another patient for Dr. Vijay Kumar.
Yes.
Yeah. This is the 8-year male, sir. 8-year male, again born out of third-degree consanguineous marriage and has got abdominal pain. Instead of passing reddish urine, TLC is normal, creatinine is normal. Urine culture shows no growth, and the sonography I am showing you. He has got a calculus in left lower ureter and multiple calculi in left kidney. These are the calculi seen. I will show you the IVP film. Typically, the child came with only 2 films, other films they have misplaced. So these are the different filling defects seen in different calyces. And in this pediatric patient, I would not be taking any decision based on these IVP. So I did a non-contrast CT. So these are the CT films. Dr. Vijay Kumar.
Can you go back to the second previous one?
Okay.
The one before this, the first one, the ureteric. Thank you.
So 8-year male patient, 500 HU calculus, left renal multiple calculi, and a ureteric calculus. There is no infection, urine culture, no growth. What would you do?
Did we do any metabolic evaluation at this point, or just straight away proceeded with the?
Come to the metabolic evaluation just after this, just after the operation.
At this point of time, then obviously the left kidney is obstructed, so we would have to intervene and clear up the stones in the ureter as well as the kidney. It would have to be a combination of a ureteroscopy and a PCNL to do both a maximum clearance of the stones. And definitely he would require to have a metabolic evaluation.
We did a ureteroscopy as well as PCNL in this patient. That's the mini PCNL and a holmium laser lithotripsy. These are the calculi which were removed, and again in this patient, it's a xanthine calculus. Anybody would like to? Anybody knows anything about this xanthine? What should we do with these patients?
See, the report that you're showing, again, it's a xanthine stone predominantly. So the patient has to go on alkalizer for a pretty long time, apart from trying to find out any other, 24-hour urine analysis and a biochemistry, serum biochemistry would have to be done. But these are all problems. 8-year-old child won't get recurrent disease. So they have to be on prolonged follow-up. These are issues which have to be explained to the patient parents. So that's it.
Dr. Sabnis, you have any comments on this?
No, xanthine difficult to treat, just a non-specific treatment and frequent follow-up because the medications are not available here. So what you have done is right. There is nothing more we can do about it. But I am really interested. Which lab are you sending that every stone is coming?
No, not every.
I'm really surprised.
Dr. Sabnis, I am doing chemical analysis of all these stones. I am sending to Ahmedabad, that Euro lab, and only those xanthine calculi picked up for this panel discussion.
Okay.
Were they from same family? Both the
Yeah.
children.
So we come to the next patient, that is patient number 8. This is for Pankaj. Pankaj, yeah, 66-year male patient. He is seen during lockdown. He has got pain in the right side of abdomen and flank since last 15 days. Past history of left flank pain 20 years back. After that, no pain on left side. And now he has got vomiting, decreased appetite, no LUTS. His BMI is 27. Pulse is 92, BP is 140, 90. Patient is tachypneic. He has got right renal tenderness. His hemoglobin is 8.7, creatinine is 18.3, and potassium is 5.3. Your USG is showing right moderate hydronephrosis, left gross hydronephrosis, bilateral upper ureteric calculi, and left kidney parenchyma thin. And this is his KUB X-ray. These are the left ureteric calculi. This is the right ureteric calculus. I am also showing you a CT. This is the CT, plain CT.
Okay, Prashant, is there anything else you want to show? Yeah.
No, I want to show something else also. Again, the calculus seen here, and this is the patient. Now he has come in lockdown during this corona episode.
Yes, Prashant, now for all practical purposes, this is like a solitary functioning right kidney. Left kidney practically has no parenchyma and probably is obstructed for a very long time. So at this time, I will be concentrating only on the right side.
Yeah.
The decisions that I need to take are, one, is this patient ready for some form of anesthesia at this time, or does he need any nephrological intervention first, in view of his creatinine being 18.31? But because his potassium is just about upper normal, I feel it should be possible to give some form of sedation or anesthesia to a patient for me to place a stent on the right side. And that is what I would do. In case if the anesthetist feel, or say if he has some other say hemodynamic or electrolyte issues, then he would first get one session of dialysis, and then I would take him for a digostenting. Once I place a stent, I would be mentally ready for this patient to go in significant post-obstructive diuresis. So this patient would be managed post-op in an intensive care setting where post-obstructive diuresis can be managed. I would not tackle the left side at this time.
So that means you are not planning to put a stent or a nephrostomy left at this point.
No, Prashant. Because you see, doing anything on the left side, I believe, you see, one, my left kidney function appears very, very poor. Two, it is possible that the left system at this time is non-infected, and I expect the left kidney function to be very poor. So if I do anything, I may either be adding infection to it, or I would definitely need to do some definitive treatment on left side, like nephrectomy. So for all practical purposes, I'll consider this as a solitary functioning right kidney and manage it accordingly.
Anybody wants to put in a stent or want to dialyze this patient before?
It will depend on the clinical situation of the patient, how severely affected he is. But by the parameters that you have set, 5.3 potassium, 18 creatinine would not actually be of much, will not make us change our process. I would probably be more inclined towards doing a nephrostomy under local anesthesia. But again, stent and nephrostomy, it's virtually the same.
Basically,
so Prashant, the only other thing that I want to check is whether the patient is in acidosis. Because you said he also has significant tachypnea. If there is no acidosis, I think a short anesthesia is possible, with which DJ/PCN can be placed. But DJ would serve well in this patient. This will also help me in the second step procedure that I plan to do in it.
Okay. Are you facing any difficulties in getting dialysis acute for an AKI patient in this COVID problem? Because one of my colleagues in Mumbai told me that he's facing a lot of difficulties getting a dialysis in AKI setting. Is the dialysis available to you or not available to you?
Luckily, I have not landed in such situation that I needed an emergency dialysis in the last 45 days. But in my hospital, the dialysis unit is on. They are preferring to do a COVID test in patients before they start dialysis. But in such emergency situations, with due precautions, it should be possible.
Anyway, in our place, COVID testing is not available. Our nephrologists were a bit reluctant, but ultimately dialyzed this patient, and after that we did a stenting on the right side and nephron on the left side. So I think that's all with this patient. We'll come to the next case. And next case is for...
Prashant, before you proceed, I just want to know what came from the left side. Means, did he produce enough urine on the left side?
Oh, 100 ml.
Yeah, so that is what I had expected, and that was the reason I would not have touched.
I did not deopted him in an acute setting. I deopted him after he was dialyzed when he was settled. When I did it was around 3 or 4 creatinine. Okay. Next patient is for Anuj. Anuj?
Yes, sir.
Case number 9 for you. And this is the 60-year male patient who has got a left flank pain from 15 days. History of visible hematuria 15 days back. Known hypertensive, mild tenderness in left renal angle. Prostate, you do not bother about that prostate. And he has got a left hydronephrosis secondary to a left renal pelvic calculus and a cortical cyst in left kidney. Urine shows that 2022 RBC, creatinine is normal, and urine culture no growth. Diabetes is well controlled. I am showing you the contrast CT video.
Do we have a plain CT also?
Yeah.
Do we have a plain CT also?
Yeah, plain also, actually. This is the stone here, 560 ounce per unit, and has got a large cyst behind the left kidney. The PC angle is 72 degree and the skin to stone distance is 12.69 centimeter.
PC angle is okay.
72 degree PC angle, skin to stone distance is 12.69 centimeter. This is the stone which is seen on plane. This is the stone which was seen here in pelvis at that time. Now is in the lower calyx at the time of CT.
Okay. It's a mobile calculus.
It's a mobile calculus.
With a large scope.
Yes. What are the options for you?
So for me, in my practice for this patient, for me it will be RIRS straight away for this patient, because the cyst is in such a way that the percutaneous approach as such is difficult.
Possible.
For the size criteria also, it will be for flexibility.
Anybody else, any other option apart from RIRS, Dr. Sabnis?
No, I think PCNL, mini-perc or the RRS, both options are okay. We have treated such patients with a large cyst quite often. And when you are doing PCNL, you just must drain the whole cyst. These are all simple cysts without any problem. So drain the whole cyst and then do PCNL like any other case. And it's a straightforward case of mini PCNL. So I think both options are open. I would agree with him. that it is RIRS or PCNL, whichever is the patient's, that surgeon's choice.
Dr. Vijay
Sir,
Kumar.
when you drain this cyst, do you also put some sclerosant in these cysts?
Nothing. This drainage is just a temporary. Eventually, when they come for follow-up, the cyst is bound to be forming again.
So you don't keep any pigtail or anything in the cyst. You have just drained it so that the access to kidney becomes.
Yeah, it is only for you to make this procedure simple and do the kidney properly.
Dr. Vijay Kumar.
Yeah, I would prefer to do an RIRS in this. The only thing is going to be 1 stage or 2 stage. The ureter looks pretty thin. So that's the only question. I would prefer to do an RIRS.
I would be a percutaneous approach would be my first choice, and that cyst won't really affect me because once the cyst is drained, as Sabnis has just mentioned out, that distance which we have calculated is lost and we are right to a regular piece.
Okay.
I would do RIRS, Prashant, because you see the lower calaceal infundibulum looks very good, and 72-degree angle is a fairly favorable angle. Angle which I would be really afraid of is if the angle is less than 30 degrees. So 72 degrees is a fair angle. Infundibulum is broad. Repositioning the stone will be easily possible. As far as I am concerned, I have never done what Sir has just explained, that draining the cyst and then doing a PCNL. I have never even thought of this. That is why I probably would not have considered PCNL in this patient. I would have done RIRS.
Nitesh.
Both the options are valid, sir. I will go ahead with RIRS if I'm not able to negotiate my scope easily. If the ureter is thinned out, then probably mini PCNL is a good option. So here I would like to ask, suppose if you are able to come through other calyx, can we marsupialize the cyst inside the system?
No, not necessary. Actually, you should not fiddle around the cyst at all because these are all simple cortical cysts. Why you want to create the unnecessary fistula inside the PC system? It is completely
Suppose same cyst is little bigger and it is causing some mild hydronephrosis. Can we marsupialize?
For example, if there is a stone in a polycystic kidney where there are multiple cysts which are there, and if you want to do PCNL, there is absolutely no problem in doing PCNL. Whatever cysts which are coming in the way, they will get ruptured, they will come into the tract, and you just ignore those cysts and do PCNL as you would have done in any normal case. So in case if there is a cyst which is coming in the way, you aspirate or puncture the PCS as per what you will do in a normal case. There is nothing like marsupialization. If the cyst is broken into the tract, it is broken into the tract. Eventually, everything will get healed. Cyst may form again or cyst may not form. So that is immaterial.
Will it get infected?
Very unlikely that it will get infected.
So we come back to our Tanuj.
Yes, sir.
Majority of the people are saying, half of the people are saying VCNL, half of the people are saying RIRS, and you want to do RIRS.
Yes, sir.
Any special precaution you would like to take during RIRS for this patient, or it's going to be an easy cakewalk for you?
No, as Dr. Vijay Kumar mentioned, the ureter, we'll have to see how it is, sir. And so if the ureter is good, then it should be relatively straightforward as far as RIRS is concerned. Because now we have shown the Armstead unit also. It appears to be a soft stone.
Dr. Vijay Kumar, is it possible to do ESWL for this patient?
See, you have told us the stone distance is 12 centimeters.
Yes.
So the fragility looks okay, but it's 12 centimeter. So getting the stone into the F2 may be a problem.
So is that 10 centimeter criteria Lakshman Rekha, or it's possible?
No. See, I have tried sometimes in these situations, but you may require more than one sitting. You may have to go and come again and again. Definitely you'll have to put a stent. So when you're putting a stent in, you might as well as do a retrograde procedure. So in earlier days, yes, 25 years ago, I have done ESWL for these sort of stones.
I think if at all you have to consider ESWL, there are 2-3 factors which are actually favorable to ESWL. One is that angle is quite okay. Infundibulum is very broad, and stone was actually moving from pelvis to lower calyx. So which implies that the fragments, if they are formed, they are likely to go back into the pelvis and subsequently come out quite easily. So these things are in favor of ESWL. So if someone wants to do ESWL, I don't think there is any quarrel about that. These factors are in favor of ESWL. And of course,
coming back to Tanuj, this patient, we did a stenting because the ureter was not accommodating, and the second sitting we did a RIRS and everything went off very well. Only thing the new that I learned today that PCNL is possible in this patient. Maybe next time if I get such patient, I would like to try the PCNL. Anybody who has not done PCNL for this, would you like to try now or not try?
I would still not try.
Is gone or what?
And I was just thinking that if I really do puncture of this cyst, probably I would put a pictal in that cyst and use a sclerosant. That was one. And my second point was the thing which you asked about the skin to stone distance. It is possible in longer skin to stone distance, knowing very well that the success rate of ESWL would be marginally less.
Okay.
The two similar cases, I have just tagged Sabnis sir on that Facebook group. Probably he can give opinion on that as well after the discussion.
Sure.
Same case, cyst with stone, sir.
No problem. See, I will tell you our experience of this cyst. We do quite a number of patients. In fact, we have large number of patients of polycystic kidney with a PCNL. And as per our experience, when you are doing puncturing and approach to the pelvic calcium system, you have to just ignore that there are cysts in the way. In the process, when you are dilating, when you are puncturing, the cyst may come and may get ruptured. But just ignore it and do PCNL as you are doing a normal case. Nothing is going to happen. So same way, ESWL, if there is a cyst, which is in the lower calyx, lower cortical, lower polar cyst, and there is a stone in the lower calyx which you have to do PCNL, just aspirate the cyst, puncture the pelvic calcium system, and go ahead. Nothing is going to happen.
Agree.
Yeah. So Tanuj, as per your advice, we performed RIRS in this patient. It went off very well, no problem. Patient is doing well. So we come to the next patient, case number 10. This is for everybody. It's a short case. 29 female, left flank pain. She had a left UPJ calculus which was 15 mm in size. She was stented in emergency because of pain, and she has, after that, 3 sittings of ESWL were given. And she has come to us 3 months after stenting and 5 weeks after the last ESWL session because she is not tolerating the stent. Okay, this is for everybody. This is the stone here in left UPJ. This is the stent and a stone in here. And she also has got a small calculus in the left lower calyx. The stent is intact. Actually, it is not broken. This is the stone. And I took up her PCNL. I removed the stent. The guide wire did not go very easily. The guide wire, there was a lot of trouble in putting in guide wire, but ultimately with difficulty it went in. I tried to push the stent, the stone did not move, and the ureteric catheter also went with difficulty. This is how the guide wire was getting coiled here, and this is the RGP on table. This is the RGP on table. This is the stone. Okay, we have marked 1, 2, 3, 4. So which entry you will take, Dr. Sabnis? 1, 2, 3, or 4?
No, we will take entry number 1. Because when you have such history, I mean, such cases we used to see so often in that ESWL era. Now ESWL almost vanished away, but these are the cases where the stone is going to get impacted to the ureteric PUJ wall, ureteric wall. Ureteric wall is going to be calcified. The stone will never get pushed. In fact, when you go inside, you will see there is a hypertrophied mucosa, there are pseudopolyposis, hypergranulation tissue which will be there around. You will sometimes not be able to find the stone where exactly it is. You have to break the stone. Sometimes you have to pull the stone from the mucosa which is adherent to the mucosa. These are all problems which you anticipate with the ESWL, 5 sittings of ESWL. So straight access is from the mark number 1 which you have made.
That is Supra 11 then.
Yes.
Prashant, my question is this RGP a supine RGP or a prone RGP?
Yes. Prone RGP, Pankaj.
This is prone RGP. Then I would take access number 1.
You take Pankaj, you take access number 1. Dr. Vijay Kumar.
Yes, same. Access number 1.
And Dr. Anil?
I would rather prefer access number 2 because this is a prone RGP. The concentration of contrast in that number 1 is much more. So it's an anterior calyx. They're showing much more contrast there. The lighter contrast is calyx 2, so which will be a more of a posterior calyx, and my entry would be a much smoother entry through a posterior based calyx. And that is why
I agree with Anil.
what Pankaj said was very critical, whether it's a supine RGP or a prone RGP. In a prone RGP, number 2 is a better choice.
Okay. Nitesh.
I agree with Anil. I changed my plan.
पंकज पार्टी मत बदलो यार. Yeah, Nitesh.
No, it was just a thought block. Means I was thinking on that line, but it was just an error on
That's
that.
the reason I put this here.
I was just
Yes.
I was just concerned with the option 2 that infundibulum is a little more angulated with, it's a minor, you can call it as a minor infundibulum. You have to go through that infundibulum and then again into the main superior infundibulum. So you could have to, do a little more talk.
But currently, since we are all using 15 French sheath or in its vicinity, so had it been the good old days of 28, 30, then probably that concern would have been there.
Yeah, Dr. Nitesh, which entry? 1, 2, 3, 4. You are muted. Unmute you. Unmute karo. Dr. Nitesh, how can I unmute you?
Sir, option number 2. One, because the calyx is most likely posterior, it is also in line with the ureter, and it is also slightly lower as compared to the first one.
Anuj.
This is option number 2 seems to be the best.
Number 2. Okay. Anyway, we did option number 3 and we went off, did the procedure very well, no problem. But it was supraqueal entry. Okay, we come to the next patient. Dr. Anil, this is for you.
Okay.
Yeah. 65-year male patient, abdominal pain, left renal calculi, IVB plates I am showing you. He has got a lower calyxial branch calculus and one more calculus.
And the stone is going to get impacted to the.
And this is the collecting system, not very dilated. I am doing the PCNL. Okay. Dr. Anil.
Yes.
I am doing the PCNL. I punctured this calyx. The tissues around the kidney are very tough. The kidney is getting pushed medially. And during that process, I have injured the lower calyx, this part, and this calculus has migrated. This calculus has migrated here. And it is outside the kidney. But this one and this one, these two calculi are in the collecting system. After that, what I have done is I have put in a guide wire from below, picked up with the forceps and brought it out. This is an 18 French track. And now I am not able to proceed further in this patient. I have called you as my professor and help me.
So the issue right now, and there is no significant bleeding occurring as of now.
There is no significant bleeding. Only thing is if I move the sheath, it bleeds. If I keep the sheath like that, it doesn't bleed. I am able to see all three calculi, also only two calculi. The lateral one I am not able to see. Look at this. This is outside. There is fat all around that calculus, and this is seen.
But you can see the calculus in one piece lying outside the PCS through a hole within the through a tear in the infundibulum probably.
Yes.
And that is not bleeding.
That is not bleeding.
So in case it's not bleeding and the patient is stable, I would still advise that we go in, and if we had a thinner scope probably, we could, and this size, what size implants are you using right now?
18. This is 18, sir. It is a metal sheet, 18 French mini PCNL sheet.
Okay. So if we could probably downsize it to 15 and we got the adequate instrumentation for that, probably that resistance which you are feeling in moving the 18 French sheet through the infundibulum would be taken care of. And if that stone which has gone outside the PCS is in one piece lying just there and it can be easily picked out, though by leaving it, no major harm is going to occur, but for the patient's sake and your own comfort level, if I can pick it up comfortably right there through that perforation without doing too much work there, I'll take that stone out. And once my movement is a little easier with a thinner size sheath, then probably I can tackle the other stone which you are also seeing. For the other calculus which is lying in other calyx, I always feel that it would require a separate, either a puncture and a irrigation or a separate mini puncture to retrieve that stone. Going through this stone, as long as it's not bleeding, you can still have chance of downsizing your sheath and working around it.
Anybody wants to help me in a different way? I am your resident. You are all my professors. Pankaj, Professor Pankaj.
No, I would agree with what Dr. Anil has said, that I would make one simple attempt of removing this stone which has got extruded. If it is possible, it is better to pick it up, because otherwise the patient gets bothered by the ROD that is seen long term. My issues here are, one, when the stone goes out, there is a risk of infection going out. There is a risk of fluid going out. And also, my major concern will be to remove the stones which are inside rather than chasing the stones which has gone out. So one simple attempt at removing the stone, failing which concentrate on the stones in the kidney and come out as soon as you can.
Dr. Vijay Kumar.
Yeah, I would agree with what Anil said. Definitely clear what is inside the system and what is outside. There's not much of a problem. Pick it out. The other stone will require a separate puncture. The other thing, just one point I would like to add is, see, when you have a problem like this, if it's just a calycial tear, it's okay. But if the tear is going to extend into the infundibulum, post-op, or sometime down the line, that infundibulum can stenoze. See, it's very imperative that we have a splint, you have a nephrostomy or something across these posterior tubeless. You must have a tube across that infundibulum to ensure that it heals adequately.
Yeah, that's a very valid point here.
Actually,
that happens often. It happens very often.
Genuinely, I called my professor. So, Professor Sabtis.
Now, Prashant, you said that you are not able to move the scope. What do you mean by that?
I'm able to move the scope. Only thing is, the issues are so tough that when I try to puncture the kidney moves medially. And I just put an 18 French metal sheet, and one part of the stone has gone medially by puncturing the medial wall of lower calyx, which is outside the kidney.
In that case, what he has said is right, that it's a mini-perk instrument. And if you are able to see both the stones which are there in the system, then you angulate and then take out those stones. And I think I agree with whatever has been said. Exactly same thing.
Okay. Ultimately, what happened? I could not do this in a first sitting. Second sitting, I put in a nephrostomy, and second sitting, I went in. The calculus which was gone outside the kidney could not be located. After 2 days, the calculus which was there in the kidney was removed.
Yeah.
Anyway, so probably none of the professors were available when I was operating. So this is what has happened.
So what you are saying is very important here, that if, in case you need to retrieve the stone which has gone out and it is easily retrievable, do it right there. Going 3 days, 7 days later, no way you are going to find it.
Yes.
No, epithelialization takes place in
24 hours.
48 to 72 hours. And when you go next time for a second stage, everything actually is epithelialized, and you will not have any fear of extravasation, and you will not see anything. So those stones are there, gone outside, and they will remain outside permanently.
With that, we come to the next patient, that is for Hitesh. Hitesh.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. 50-year male patient, left abdominal pain. He has similar pain on right side intermittently, history of hematuria, no renal angle tenderness, and these are the calculi. It's a large pelvic calculus and a branch 2-3 calculi in the lower calyx, dilated left kidney. And this is the PCNL we are doing, lower calyxal approach. Everything went off very smooth, no problem. Stone removed, fragmented, complete clearance, stent put. But when I was removing the ampla seed, he started bleeding. At that point, I put in a Foley's catheter as a nephrostomy. And
sorry, I didn't get you, sir. Can you last part?
Yeah, this is the PCNL is done. Everything fine, no problem. Yes. When I'm trying to remove the ampla sheath, he started bleeding.
Okay.
So what I did, I put in a guide wire through the ampla sheath and putting a Foley's catheter over that, and Foley's catheter is kept temporarily puncture site in the parenchyma. The tip of the Foley is in the collecting system, and PCNL is done, patient is fine. Post-op, this is the check X-ray on day 2. This is the balloon of Foley catheter. I deflated this balloon gradually and removed this on day 3. After I removed the nephrostomy, he started bleeding. That is day 4, his hemoglobin came to 7.3. Preoperatively, it was 11.4. His urethral catheter got blocked. I washed it, changed the catheter, gave him bed rest, ethamzylate, antibiotic, laxative, whole masala, everything given. 2 unit blood transfusion given. 2 days, day 4.
So there is a significant drop in hemoglobin and patient is having clot retention. So I would like to go ahead and do a CT angio in this case, find out any aneurysm is there or not, and probably he may need a conventional angio and embolization, selective embolization.
Dr. Sabnis.
Yes, I think this is the indication. It all depends on whether you do CT angio, whether it's a conventional angio. There's a lot of discussion which will go on, but it all depends on what facility you have. We have facility of CT angio. We have facility of conventional angio. So in that case, our choice is conventional angio, because in case if you find anything, you can embolize there and there. If you find that everything is normal, then you don't have to do anything. You assume that it's a venous bleeding, and then conservative management eventually will work.
Dr. Vijay Kumar.
See, 2 points over the years. What I've seen is, if you have such a significant drop requiring more than 2 units within 24 hours, and you have a clot retention, it is quite significant. This sort of patient would definitely have a bleeder requiring an embolization. If the drop was slower, intermittent and all that, and you're keeping the patient in the hospital for 3-4 days, then probably you could do a CT angio to make sure that an embolization is required. Otherwise, this sort of patient, I would straight away go for an angio embolization.
Okay, sir. Anyway, we did not have the facility for angiography. We waited, and after 2 days, everything cleared. We come to the next patient.
So in that case, your this bleeding was venous.
It must be a parenchymal in the parenchymal.
This happens that when venous bleeding also can be significant, and sometimes when you angio, everything is normal, and eventually those patients definitely become all right with conservative management. But because you didn't have any facilities, so that's okay. But if facilities were there, I think this was the indication for angiography, so that in case if there is anything, you can always embolize, because these patients, if it was arterial, they will tend to bleed again and again, and you never know, next bleeding may be so torrential that he may go into hypotension and a shock.
Prashant, the learning from this case is not that you got away with it, that's good. But the learning is, as Vijay said, if the patient has required a clot evacuation, he has had a significant drop requiring transfusion, don't wait, just go in. Don't let your own ego as a surgeon, if it is your own case, come in the way. Just go in and have an angio done. You will be far safer, the patient will be safer.
So many of the surgeons, they are operating in periphery, and in such cases, suppose bleeding happens, should we refer the patient where the facility is available?
Of course.
We should not wait.
Of course, he has to. Yeah. Because if he waits, the situation gets from bad to worse.
True, sir.
See, in a situation like this, negative angiography is far better than avoiding angiography.
Yes.
True, sir. So I feel if facility is not available, we should refer the patient
as soon as possible.
Yes, sir.
So next patient is for Dr. Vijay Kumar.
Yes, sir.
36-year male patient, right renal lower calyx partial stagnant calculus. He has undergone right pyelolithotomy 15 years back, and this time had a partial stagnant calculus in lower calyx, did a PCNL with mini PCNL for 5 times, volume with a fragmentation, everything uneventful, no problem, no stent, a small feeding tube kept as nephrostomy. His preoperative hemoglobin was 13.3. On day 2, his hemoglobin was 12.5. and I have discharged the patient on day 2, removing his feeding tube, which I have kept as a nephrostomy. He stays at around 200 kilometers from my hospital. He went home, and on day 10 of the operation, I got a call from general surgeon that your patient has come to me with hematuria, but there is no fever, no pain. His hemoglobin done at a periphery was 7.5. That surgeon catheterized him, gave him a bladder wash, transfused 2 units of blood, and then shifted that patient to me. When the patient came to me, his bladder was palpable. I just gave a bladder wash, and after one bladder wash, the urine was clear. I evacuated all the clots. His hemoglobin was 8.5 by the time he reached me. After this, I again gave him 2 units of transfusion. Hemoglobin became 9.8. He was hemodynamically stable. There was no residual calculus on sonography. I did a sonography. There was no residual calculus on sonography, and 1 centimeter of perirenal hematoma and few clots in bladder. But this is how his urine was. I observed him for 2 days. This is how things went on. So now it is day 14 of the operation. He has come to me with that history. Now what do I do?
See, this patient has had a previous pyelolithotomy.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, so there's a scar, and when you go through a scar, I mean, the procedure itself is a little more tougher than a normal PCNM. And the other thing is that, you know, your nephrostomy tract heals much slower. The tract bleeding is also more. Sometimes I've had to stage a procedure also like this. That's by the side. But in this patient, the bleeding started on day 10.
Yes, sir.
Day 10 means then we normally look at it as a secondary hemorrhage. So if it's a secondary hemorrhage, then it may be some infective cause. Maybe the parenchyma did not shrink properly because it's an already operated kidney. So it's possible that there is some oozing from the kidney which ultimately stopped. So here again, going by my criteria, what I've seen over the years is if the drop requires more than 2 units within 24 hours, I mean drop to 7 grams, 6 grams, and there's clot retention. Clot retention is something which I'm always worried. If a person requires clot retention and even clot evacuation, not once but twice, to err on the safer side, I would definitely do an angio and make him safe and myself safe. Because he goes back again 200 kilometers, and if he goes into another episode of hemorrhage and hypotension, we'll be in serious medical legal issues. So, okay, you observed and managed him. Maybe he didn't have anything major, but I would err on the safe, to be on the safe side. At least I would have got a CT angio on him.
So even if his urine is as clear as this, you would
no, that's what. Here, got away. That's what I mean to say. But this is possibly on the 14th day, 4 days after he came to you. I would have intervened somewhere on the 12th day itself. On day 2 itself, when in spite of transfusing and you had to do clot evacuation the second time, I would have definitely done a CT angio within the first 48 hours of him returning to the institution. Although I know previously pyelolithotomized patient, scar and wound healing, contraction of the nephrostomy tract, all those things are a problem. And secondary hemorrhage is much higher. But to be on the safe side, I would have asked for a CT angio.
Pankaj.
I would agree with practically everything that Dr. Vijay Kumar has said. Even I would have done a CT angio much earlier. I would also accept that this most likely is a secondary bleeding which is related to some infection. So my treatment plan would be strict bed rest, hydration, antibiotics, and observe. But a CT angio would not harm.
So what happened 2 days after he had hematuria again, and that time we did an angiography, and this is what was done. We had a AV fissure.
Prashant, I was about to say it. When you were discharging this patient on the day 14, I mean, it is very important. Tell him that you might, and we have done nothing. He has just improved. Tell him that he could have another episode. So it's and do document it there, because as Vijay mentioned, we would be in a medical legal soup otherwise.
Is it
Absolutely
possible for him to bleed after this embolization?
Yeah.
Very unlikely.
Patient can have bleeding anytime because of the aneurysm, because of AV malformation anytime.
After embolization also?
No, after what you are asking, after embolization.
Yes.
Yes, it can happen.
After embolization, if you take the post embolization plate and if that is completely blocked, then whichever bleeding which is happening is probably because of the venous, and that is definitely is going to get controlled with the conservative management.
What should be the post-operative management after embolization?
After embolization, you just give broad spectrum antibiotics because there is always some element of added secondary hemorrhage. It is not only the one cause that it is causing bleeding. Along with that, there is some infection which you have to take control. And of course, avoiding all jerky movements, scooter riding, and all those things, conservative managements are required. So antibiotics, proper hydration, avoiding any major movements is the standard treatment.
I would add a three-way catheter and irrigating the bladder for at least 24 hours, because there will be some trickling down. You will have a nuisance of again repeating a clot evacuation again. So you can keep washing the bladder with a three-way catheter. It avoids another procedure where you have to put him in lithotomy. You have to flex the groin again where there may be a puncture and all those things. Of course, nowadays they do transradial mostly, but still, this is another thing which I routinely do. If I have to do a clot evacuation, I put a three-way catheter and wash the bladder continuously.
Correct. Absolutely true. Because there is always some amount of blood which remains in the bladder, some clots, and that keep giving the red color of urine. So post embolization, we just put a scope, whatever is there, we evacuate, put a three-way irrigation so that urine is completely clear, and you know that there is no more blood which is coming from the PC system.
And of course, the patient hates to go to the OT once again.
So Dr. Sabnis, he is 200 kilometers from my hospitals. After embolization, how many days I should keep in my hospital?
So once you have done embolization and urine is very clear, catheter is out, observe for 1 day after catheter removal, gradually make him ambulatory, move around here and there for 1 more day. And of this now 3-4 days are over, he is quite ambulatory, moving around, then he is fit for discharge. Then very unlikely that everything...
5 days after embolization.
Yes.
And document his HB-PCV to be safe.
Okay, sir.
Have a documentation of his HB-PCV.
Yeah. So that brings us to the last patient today, and this is for Dr. Sabnis. This is a 59-year lady, the known case of horseshoe kidney. Doesn't have any pain, but only thing is because she has been operated for kidney stone in past. Open surgery was done in past for a stone. She is undergoing regular sonography, which is showing us calculus. I am showing you the sonography. During routine, plenty of pulse, and culture was positive. We treated her with the culture specific antibiotics. This is the sonography. There are few calculi seen here and there. This is the calculus which is seen in the isthmus. Right kidney, there is a 22 millimeter calculus in the pelvis of right kidney, and there are few insignificant calculi in left kidney. Right. Yeah, this is sir, Sabnis sir.
Yes.
This large calculus is in the right kidney, and these are in the left kidney.
So this is the right side kidney, there is isthmus.
Yeah, this is right side kidney isthmus. We are planning to operate in the right side only. We are not going to talk on the left kidney right now.
Okay. So on the RGP, you have to confirm.
I'll show you CT. That's the stone which is just exactly here. This is liver.
Yes. So it is the show the CT. Yes. So this is quite a big size stone into the isthmus, almost end of the isthmus of the right kidney. So in such a cases, there are 3-4 things which you need to do it. It is of course the case for the PCNL. So in this case, you have to make the upper calyx puncture. And once you make a puncture, you need to do a flexible flexible nephroscope, see where exactly is the infundibulum, pass a wire in that infundibulum, along with the wire, see the wire which is calling up around the stone. If required, put a contrast by putting a nephroscope at the infundibulum and injecting contrast, so you know where exactly is the angle, how exactly you have to take the position. Put a wire right up to the infundibulum, deep in the infundibulum, and take a nephroscope and put a nephroscope and break the stone with the laser. Now, in case if that is not happening, with the upper calyx puncture, the other thing is that try with the 8 French short ureteroscope. Sometimes you can get angle, and if it is not getting angle, then you have to try with the flexible ureteroscope, in which you can thread the ureteroscope right up to the stone. Important trick is that when you are putting a flexible nephroscope, you are inside the anatomy is completely disturbed, so you never you don't get orientation. So what you have to do is put a wire and follow the wire up to the level of the stone.
My main problem with this patient was
Puncture.
Puncture
Site.
Puncture site has to be upper calyx, and a medial puncture.
It has to.
Remember, to get the angle to the infundibulum and the PUJ. See how you identify infundibulum. You see the PUJ, and when you withdraw the scope, on the medial side, you will see the small opening. That is the infundibulum. And to get that infundibulum, isthmus.
Yeah.
So you have to make the upper calyx puncture. Otherwise, you will not get that angle properly. Upper calyx puncture is the key to the success. And upper calyx puncture in horseshoe kidney is little medial. The level which we get in a normal kidney, the lateral angle is not there. You have to go a little posteriorly or a little medially in a prone position. So that you will get a relatively straightforward track.
And ultrasound is essential in this case while doing a puncture, because the window between the liver edge and the spine is very less. So the access to the upper calyx is narrow because the liver is coming really down. If you see the CT image now.
Yes.
So an ultrasound is essential while planning. As Dr. Sabnis mentioned, you have to locate the your site of entry in the kidney, but even this, you have to see the tract is also safe and you are not going transhepatic.
Dr. Vijay Kumar, any tips and tricks for this?
Well, sir, technically it's a very demanding and difficult situation. All the points which Dr. Sabnis and Anil have told good. Probably the only other thing that I would add is that you will have to use a retrograde ureteric catheter or the double lumen catheter or something to guide you a little more with the wire from below also. So, to negotiate a curve like that is extremely difficult. Isthmus stones,
very difficult.
I'm very frank, I've not been very successful at reaching.
Very difficult.
Okay.
There are few points which I was thinking. To be very frank with you, just based on these videos that you are showing, is very difficult to plan the surgery. But the few things more which I noted is that this patient appears to be fairly obese, and the kidney appears much anterior as compared to the routine horseshoe kidneys that you see. So one more theoretical option that I'll keep in mind is getting a CT guided puncture to the upper calyx. So though sonography should help in most situations, but one more option in such situations is a CT guided puncture. In last 5 years, there have been 2 patients where I have used this, and the only thing that I would want to tell about CT guided is that it's important that we be there with the patient in the CT when the radiologist does the CT access, because for radiologists, access is only important. Really directing the access to the stone is not important. So first time I had just sent for CT access, and then I repented because that track was just suboptimal for me. So that was a lesson learned. So I am sure sonography guided will be possible, but a CT guided access is also something I'll keep in mind.
Dr. Sabnis, would you like to take a CT guided access or a sonography guided access?
No, by and large, we always do ultrasound guided puncture. So whether it is a horseshoe kidney, whether it is a normal kidney, it is almost always we do ultrasound guided puncture. So I don't think there is going to be any problem with the ultrasound guided puncture. And with the ureteric catheter, you can always distend the system, and then you can locate where exactly is the calyx. That's the benefit of the ureteric catheter, and then puncture it.
Anuj. Anuj,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
so would you do a plain fluoroscopy guided puncture, CT puncture, or ultrasound puncture?
Sir, both ultrasound and fluoro-guided puncture preferably, but I would also keep an option of lap-assisted PCNL in this case, because the window, I'll have to see the CT again and again to know that, but it appears that there's not much of a window to because of the liver.
Is lap-assisted PCNL possible in a ischemic stone?
Prashant,
Yeah.
I have reported one lap-assisted PCNL for ischemic stone way back, I think, if I remember it right, in 2001 or 2002. But that was a very specific patient where there was a infundibular stenosis in an ischemic calyx. And there were also infundibular narrowings for the upper calyx with a nearly non-existent renal pelvis. So there was no way I could have gone from upper calyx and gone into the ischemic calyx even with a flexible nephroscope. So lab assisted is possible because ischemia is usually anteriorly directed. But in this patient where the system otherwise looks friendly for PCNL, the only issue is making a tract which doesn't go through the liver. Otherwise, I think the PCNL should be straightforward.
No, Prashant, do you mean lab-assisted PCNL or laparoscopic pyelolithotomy or this? Because there is no question of lab-assisted puncture here. It is a posterior puncture. But what I think you are meaning is that with the laparoscopy, you take a incision on the infundibulum and deliver the stone. That is what you meant?
Anuj, what did you mean?
My personal experience with chest stones is less. I'm not had such difficult
What is
stones.
actually,
I have
lab
managed.
assisted puncture or a laparoscopic pyelolithotomy?
I was thinking more about access in this case. I was more thinking more about access in this case. So I meant that, but if the seniors are saying that's not a good idea, then I would reconsider that.
If you have a thick infundibulum, and as CT is showing that it's a thick parenchyma, thick infundibulum, sorry, not infundibulum, thick isthmus, then it is difficult to do a lap pyelolithotomy because you don't have any idea where exactly to take the incision. And once you take the incision on the parenchyma, it is likely to bleed. So it's not pyelolithotomy, then it becomes actually a nephrolithotomy. Nephrolithotomy, which is a bit difficult.
Also, the isthmus will have a lot of vessels running on top.
Yeah.
The blood
So
supply
it is risky.
over the isthmus.
Is RIRS an option at all for this case?
RIRS, I'll come to RIRS. This patient we took a sorry. We took a sonography guided access here, upper calyx. We punctured that calyx, went inside. Whatever this much lateral part of the stone I could fragment, but whatever medial was remaining here, as you can see here, I tried with a flexible scope, flexible nephroscope, flexible ureteroscope.
Doesn't work.
By putting a guide wire, nothing. I could not see that stone, but it was seen only on fluoroscopy. But even after a lot of bending of the scope, I could not see that half of the stone. I have to leave that behind and come out.
Two such similar cases where the infundibulum is quite wide and there is a ischemic stone. What we actually did is we did ESWL in prone position, and then we did PCNL and we washed out the stone there. So most of the stone then came out and came in the pelvis, and we were able to remove the stone. So prone ESWL followed by a PCNL can be done.
Another tip is that in a patient like this where you find it difficult in the first stage, you can wait for 2 or 3 days. Intrarenal manipulations become much easier in a chronic tract as compared to the upper tract. Quite often you will find that sometimes it's very difficult to go into the isthmus. If you wait and do second stage PCNL, you find that actually you are going it quite easily.
That was the last case. Nitesh, are there any questions from the audience?
So I've already shared with you on your chat box, sir.
I don't know. Can you take the question, because I don't know how to take the question. Can you take the question part?
Because they are related to the cases actually.
Now, what we'll have to do is that we have to answer in the Facebook chat box the questions.
No, I've already shared in sir's chat box here. I will just share in the panel box.
Because here it will not be seen.
No, I've already shared. So I have copied from the Facebook and I have shared here.
Okay.
I'll share with all the panelists. Just 1 second. Because they are related to most of the questions are related to particular case. So we have to open the case and
so Prashant, I think you have collected a very nice cases, a variety of cases, right from the lower ureter to all sorts of variety of presented. Very nice collection, and I think almost entire gamut of what can be discussed in the stone disease. You have brought out the cases. So congratulations for a wonderful, very well organizing this whole panel discussion.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. Actually, we started from urachus and ended in a horseshoe kidney.
Yes.
And I must thank all the panelists, Dr. Anil, Dr. Sabnis, Dr. Nitesh, Pankaj, Tanuj, and Dr. Vijay Kumar. I thank you all for sparing time for this. And I enjoyed doing this more than you had enjoyed participating in it.
Right.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Prashant. Wonderful session.
Yeah. Are there any questions, Nitesh?
want opinion of.
I'm also trying to check.
Nitesh, you could actually.
So I'm just sharing that because they are related to cases actually. Particular case we have to open. So Prashant sir only have to take the questions.
Okay.
Because they're. I'm sharing with everyone now. You can see the questions in the chat box.
Yeah. Some of the opinions are for their own patients, probably.
Yeah, these are for own patient.
This is for what I think I will answer those questions on the Facebook chat box.
There are more congratulations than questions.
No, actually, what we can do is that all of us can see the Facebook chat, and then we keep answering those questions, whichever questions which are there.
Fair, sir. I think that's quite good.
I think that will be better rather than because sometimes what